The whole purpose behind behavioral finance is to better understand these human biases when it comes to investing in the stock market and how we as humans tend to make decisions when we're trying to invest. Welcome back to another video in a new year, everyone. Today we're going to discuss investing. So throughout 2019 during the lockdown, one of the things that I started doing quite a bit more was reading about the stock market, reading about stocks and reading about investing. And some of the things that I noticed is that on one hand, investing tends to be relatively simple, but at the same time quite complex. There are tens of thousands of stocks out there, and that is before we consider ETFs and other type of commodities and other types of things that you can invest in. For each individual thing that you want to invest in, there'll be a lot of different information that you need to look at. As a human, it's just not possible for you to pay attention to all those different details for every single thing. And what happens at that point is that your brain starts filling information, and in order to be able to make a quicker type of decision, they are utilizing what's called a rule of thumb or a heuristic. When you are thinking about behavioral finance, it's nothing very complex. Think about it as a mixture of psychological principles with some conventional economics and finance. The whole purpose behind behavioral finance is to better understand these human biases when it comes to investing in the stock market and how we as humans tend to make decisions when we're trying to invest. Okay, so as I've mentioned, because we have a limited capacity to process this large amount of information and news, our brain utilizes these heuristics in order to make quicker decisions. And this is not necessarily per se a bad thing. There's some positives to it as well. So the positive to it is that when we are overwhelmed by information, our brain is still able to make very good decisions utilizing a small amount of information. But it can also be quite bad when we are trying to invest in a company or an organization and we base that decision on limited amount of information or biased news, which means that we're going to make a bad decision and potentially lose a lot of money. A very simple example of this can be grouping stocks into categories. So for example, if we're thinking about tech stocks, growth stocks, dividend stocks, the fact that we are looking at these stocks all together tends to lead to errors when we are trying to invest in one of those companies, because we assume if Apple is doing well, being a tech company, potentially Facebook and Google and all the other big tech companies will have a similar path. And as I mentioned, a lot of times they do, but a lot of times they do not. A very good example of this is our tendency as humans to overweight stories and news rather than numerical data. Some of you may be familiar with the company called Nikola, which is an organization that at some point had a valuation of over 60 billion. And I want you to take a second to think about that, 60 billion. And what's interesting about this company is that it has currently no employees, it has no factories, it has no product. So the only reason why this company had this crazy high valuation is the hype that's been created around it. And that has been because of a charismatic CEO that tells very good stories and makes you believe that this company will be amazing. However, the truth is that very few people are like Elon Musk, that they say things but they are also executing. They care about nothing else than creating a great product, a great organization. They have a vision and they are willing to work for that 16 to 18 hours a day and make it happen. Another thing that is being utilized a lot by people when they're trying to convince you to invest in their companies because they're great is by utilizing buzzwords. And this could be things such as blockchain, cryptocurrency, machine learning algorithms, AI, electric vehicles. These words are generally utilized by people that are quite charismatic in order to create a more engaging and compelling story and create a lot of hype regarding the product and the service that they're planning to sell, creating more demand for the products and distracting you from the actual data. And don't get me wrong, I am not saying that being able to create hype through amazing storytelling and being an engaging leader is not essential to become an entrepreneur, because it is. In order to create a great company, it's important to be able to tell a compelling story and bring others on the journey with you and show them your vision. The problem here is that story part shouldn't detract from the actual data and numbers. It should complement it. While a lot of new entrepreneurs find it quite easy to tell you about their company and vision and how amazing their product is gonna be, and they are able to tell you a compelling story, not a lot of them really understand how much work is needed to create a company that would literally change the world. And that is where their own biases and overconfidence starts influencing not only what they can execute and promise, but also how we perceive that and how we start investing. We also tend to underestimate our attachment to companies and stocks. And more specifically, we tend to underestimate how much news will influence our decisions to invest in a good company. Seeing a negative story about a company on the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times will make you believe that the company is going through a lot of financial troubles or is having a lot of issues. And that will make the stock drop, and a lot of people sell their stocks when that happens. Even if this news would not have a big impact on the overall financials of the company, we often make decisions and act as it does. Lastly, once we start investing, it's very easy to get overconfident in our ability to invest. And that happens all the time, and people lose a lot of money. And this overconfidence is another behavioral bias that influences how we make decisions regarding investing and stocks, and makes us make a lot of silly mistakes and errors that will cost us a lot of money. So to conclude, we want to keep in mind these behavioral influences, and most importantly, we want to keep them in check whenever we make any financial decisions. They influence us more than we think they do, and most importantly, they hinder our ability to judge investments in the right way and make good financial decisions. If you enjoy this type of content and this type of videos, we'll discuss more strategies on why investing is hard, why storytelling has such a big influence on how we perceive information and how we act upon it, and a lot of different strategies to help you become more self-aware when you're investing and how these biases influence your thinking. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end of the video, and I will see you on the next one.